Monaco, Singapore, Las Vegas. What do they all have in common? Well, they're all F1 street circuits. 20 years ago, the sports only visited 3 a year. From 2026, there'll be 10, despite the actual racing often being worse. So why? Why are there so many street circuits? Cars racing past the Casino Monte Carlo is one of the iconic images in all of sport. But in the last few years, it's been joined in the Street Circuit Club by the dazzling Grand Prix on the Las Vegas Strip, in Miami, Azerbaijan and others. And there's no sign of the trend slowing down. The streets of Madrid have also gotten involved, and there are conversations about Grand Prix in the capitals of Thailand and Rwanda. But fitting them in means we said goodbye to classic circuits like Hockenheim and Imola, angering fans who are still packing out the European tracks like Spa, the Hungaroring and Monza. And these generally produce more wheel-to-wheel action than street circuits too. At Silverstone in 2025, there were a total of 26 on-track overtakes. At Monaco, 4. I'm an F1 enthusiast. Even I struggle with that. But it appears to be a good step. In 2025, there was a record 2.3 million strong viewership for the Monaco Grand Prix in the US alone. Meanwhile, for the British Grand Prix several weeks later, 1.5 million tuned in. So why are we seeing this drive towards street circuits? Well, no prizes for guessing. Money. Formula One demands a fee of between $20 and $60 million for the rights to even hold an event. In total, including sponsorships, it's believed officials in Saudi Arabia pay almost $100 million for their race. The huge fees are possible because of the street track's city centre locations, as people staying at hotels at inflated prices and tourist sites brimming with visitors mean the cities rake the cash back in when the race comes to town. So it makes financial sense for Formula One and the cities, but will it cost the sport in the long run if F1 races are too boring? After all, nothing beats the roar of an F1 car as it flies through the forests of Europe, or mechanics watching a storm coming across the humid Asian countryside. Take that away and, well, you may as well just watch American IndyCar.
Yeah, welcome one, welcome all to tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express, your weekly injection of news from all over football's greatest continent and beyond. Lots to get through tonight. I'm Danny Kelly. I'll be accompanied on the journey, of course, by Andy Brassell, who's taking a few hours out of his busy trans-global football watching schedule, about which more later, in order to help us with the programme. Well, of all the major stories from across the continent, of course, starting with the fact that Paul Pogba, after nearly three years as not a professional footballer anymore, has returned to the game. When Mbappe watched a huge Tuesday and Wednesday in the Champions League. I mean, just impossible to overestimate some of the size of some of these games. We'll also preview the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. We'll be looking at that draw for the playoffs for the final European places in the upcoming World Cup in America, Canada and Mexico. Really interesting draw for that. Tim Vickery will join us from South America and we'll take you around all the big leagues as well. Welcome one, welcome all. Bienvenue, willkommen, Bolcha, every single one of you, to Trans Europe Express. Evening, Andy. How are you doing?
Evening, Danny. Massive goal in Milan in the derby. Inter have bossed the first half. They're behind. Christian Pulisic has just put Milan in front, saved by Jan Sommer from a shot from outside the penalty area. Not sure who made the shot. I'm going to look into that for you. Pulisic was first in there, tapped in the rebound, 54 minutes, Inter 0, Milan 1.
Yes, I daren't say this. For football fans of a certain vintage, 15 years ago, whatever it was, the 4-4 draw when Modric hit the post and Aaron Lennon put it in. It's almost identical kind of angles to that, though I perhaps shouldn't be mentioning North London derbies today. Though, Andy, you've got to be honest, I'm bearing up pretty well. England in the cricket threw it away. Ireland in the rugby, most ridiculous performance in the history of the game. And then Spurs at the Emirates. I'm really getting a whacking. I used up all my sporting luck with Troy Parrott in the past 10 days.
Yes.
This is a big story, Andy. The last time Paul Pogba, World Cup winner, of course, played professional football was for Juventus on the 3rd of September, 2023. Even then, it was only a scrap of a performance in an unhappy time in Turin. But, so essentially he hasn't been a professional footballer for 3 years. Tell us about his comeback, because he has made a comeback. And I'm going to set you up here, Andy, a little bit from our conversation earlier. It's easy, particularly from an English point of view, given what went on at Manchester United, to see him as a person who has had a drugs ban, has had legal problems, has had injuries, and who has therefore kind of not wasted, not thrown away, but just hasn't fulfilled all that astonishing talent that he had in his mid-20s. There's more to the story than that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think a quick Paul Pogba recap is in order, really. After he played his first game in 2 years, 2 months, he played 5 minutes at the end of Monaco's defeat at Rennes yesterday night, and it was a huge deal. And I think maybe there will be some English fans who are a little bit perplexed about the reception that he got, because when he came on as substitute, he wasn't only applauded by Monaco fans, he was applauded by Rennes fans who made up most of the stadium at the Rozon Park.
Yeah.
Rennes fans were singing his name. And he had to do a lap of honour at the end. He was a bit teary and a bit overwhelmed by it, I think, because there must have been moments, even though he's had to believe in himself to get back there, that he must have thought he wouldn't play at this level again for a team. Okay, they're in Ligue 1, but it's one of the top 5 leagues in Europe, and he's involved with a Champions League club, and we'll hope to play more and more for them as the season goes by. And I think really it was just an underlining of what a residual affection there is for him in France as part of that 2018 World Cup winning side, Danny, because I think it is easy almost to look at him as an ex-footballer. As you say, two and a bit years since he last played, but the season before that, he started 1 game for Juventus. He played 151 minutes. And then you go back to his last season at Manchester United, where he started 16 times in the Premier League. You know, it's a long time since we've been able to really say Paul Pogba is a footballer, let alone elite footballer. So a lot of what's happened, I know people will look at the drugs ban, and you know it was acknowledged on appeal that he'd not knowingly taken the substance that he was given by this dietitian in Miami. So whether you think that was daft, naive, ill-advised, whatever, I think to call him a cheat is a stretch. Also, what was perhaps worse for him during that period is, remember, he had to face members of his own family in extortion case in court, that
was incredible.
Just unimaginable, really. And that's before we get to the injuries that I think had their root in him trying to find alternative ways to get himself fit. That much is clear, whatever your view on the drug ban. So this is someone who's, whatever your sympathy or lack of it towards Paul Pogba, has been to hell and back over the last couple of years. And he's clearly just delighted to be playing again. Now, would those Rennes fans have applauded him in the same way had they not been 4-0 up at the same time? We'll never know the answer to that.
We won't know the answer to that, but it is worth noting the final score was 4-1. So in those 5 minutes, he'd started the fight back.
Yeah, give him a further 10 and who knows what would have happened. Look, he said at the end of it, and he spoke to the media afterwards, he said, this is just the start of it. Now I've got to get to the point where I can actually start games, play a full game. I mean, what might work in his favour? There are a couple of things that work in his favour. Firstly, Monaco's season, I'm beginning to think, is a bit of a write-off. As we'll talk about in the Ligue 1 section later, that there is gap developing between the top 3 and the rest. They are not in it, and they're not likely to be anytime soon. They're on
you would not be sued for exaggeration if you were to say that Monaco's season so far is a downright disaster, despite being well onto their second coach of the season.
It is totally. I mean, already there are big question marks over Sébastien Pocognoli. Of course, won the league in Belgium with Union Saint-Gilloise last season. And you always wondered, was he on a bit of a hiding to nothing, leaving behind that goodwill for a Monaco where there's a lot of pressure, a lot of demand and a lot of scope to fail, I think. Bearing in mind they've lent heavily on the transfer window on experienced players, but experienced players who've had injuries. So him, Eric Dyer, the much younger Ansu Fati, but my goodness, he's had some injuries as well. And he had a terrible game yesterday. He missed some big chances early on. 2 from L'Équipe today. L'Équipe, who also wrote, Sébastien Pocognoli will always be the Monaco coach that gave Paul Pogba his debut. Now, I think to have 8 games into your Ligue 1 career, your epitaph written is quite harsh, but that is the situation that they're in at the moment. And there's a lot of financial pressure on a Monaco coach, a lot of demand on a Monaco coach. So Paul Pogba's role is, it's not just to play, it's to help develop the young players around him, make sure they're on the straight and narrow, make sure they're in a good position to be sold in a year or 2 years or whenever their time arrives. But for him, I think it's a really great opportunity. This has done wonders, this Monaco move for Eric Dyer. Despite the fact he's been injured recently, people have really warmed to him. People love him already. And Pogba,
he's a fantastic guy. Yeah.
He's had that positive response as well, I think.
Andy, let me ask you, I'll come back to Paul Pogba in a second. I've just seen Christian Pulisic's goal again on the little screen in front of me. Fascinating view from the referee's camera. The referee is cameraed up here for this game. And I can see him now.
I mean, it does rather recall like cyclists with a GoPro on to me.
Yeah.
At the moment, maybe it's gonna improve over time. But Danny, news from Alicante, there is perhaps an even bigger goal. Elche 1.
Whoa.
Elche 1, Real Madrid 0. Febas has opened the scoring. Really lovely move. And he's just towed it past Thibaut Courtois in off the inside of the post. Kylian Mbappe is chuntering on the halfway line. That kicked off at 8, so it's a little behind. But 54 minutes, and it's Elche 1, Real Madrid 0. Remember, Barcelona 1 on their return to the Camp Nou yesterday, as we'll be hearing in a minute.
I'll take your point about the quality of the ref cam, but what struck me was that the angle I was seeing the goal from would have been exactly as, say, someone like Hakan Çalhanoğlu would have seen the goal from. It's very interesting. Why are they playing with an orange ball in Italy?
Well, we've seen a lot of this in Europe this weekend, and obviously we've had snow here in the northeast of England this week. You can't be too careful. We saw the Canadian Premier League conclusion, didn't we, with that overhead kick winner in the snow the other week. So in a lot of European countries, we've had orange, pink and red balls, depending on A, your country, and B, your level of colour blindness, if you're me, this weekend.
An orange ball is a beautiful thing, and of course, for people of a certain vintage, reminds us of when they used to play in the snow in this country before every club had undersoil heating. I guess Paul Pogba said it himself, Andy. We'll keep an eye on this story, but I think it's worth saying it's a small step in what will be a long journey, because
yes,
if you think about his latter season at Manchester United as being part-time as well, for a variety of reasons, it's actually, he's had more seasons off now than he's had on since he won the World Cup. I mean, it's a sobering thought for a professional athlete, isn't it?
I think that's right, Danny. Look, I feel I can describe and explain quite well the role that he'll have at Monaco. In terms of describing what he'll do on the pitch, I and you can, and the rest of us, can only speculate, because it's been so long since he's been a regular footballer. So it's wonderful to see him back out there. There's no doubt about that. But we can't know whether he'll be able to start regularly, or he'll last the season, or he'll be able to get back anywhere near what he had before. But I guess if I'm looking for something to cling to, if I'm a fan, or someone who just, has goodwill towards him, I'm thinking you look at the deeper role that he played, what he sacrificed of the attacking side of his game to help France in the 2018 World Cup, which is one of the biggest moments, if not the biggest moment of his career. He did that very well. Now, if he could play at that sort of deeper playmaker role at Monaco, he's got the legs around him, the younger guys who can do all the running for him. So there's no, like, you need to come in and run 12 kilometres a game or anything like that. I think it could work well if yeah, you know, Monaco's not stable at the moment, as we were saying. So who knows what the next coach and the coach after that will want.
That may well be to his advantage, well, because currently he couldn't make the team any worse, could he? Let's be truthful. We'll have a quick break now, and we'll go turn our attention, that phrase again, to Germany. And regular listeners over the last 10 years, this could well be the worst music-related headline we've ever done for a section here on Trans-Europe Express. Yes, I'll be on Hawksby and Jacobs about 1:15 tomorrow to go through all the Premier League matches. Watch myself and Paul try and avoid the game in North London as best we can. We've got a poll for you tonight, since we were talking about Paul Pogba, and it's almost random because it mentions three other players who were great midfielders when he was at his absolute peak. Who was the better midfielder in their prime? Paul Pogba, Thiago Alcantara, Marco Verratti, or Ivan Rakitic? We've left out one or two of the Real Madrid players who were playing at the time because it would have skewed the poll. So you've got Thiago, you've got Paul Pogba, you've got Verratti, you've got Rakitic. Who was the better of those midfielders in their absolute prime? It's a Twitter poll, of course, so go to X, at Danny Kelly Words, at talkSPORT, or at Andy Brassell, 2 S's and 2 L's. Love to see what you make of that one. Andy, which then takes us to talking about Germany. And our headline, as I say, prepare yourselves, those of you who are not the greatest fan of puns. Of course I am. It's the highest form of wit. Because the headline is, really are saying something. Because Michael Olise, who was saying something, was central to a bizarre game played between Bayern Munich, runaway leaders of the Bundesliga, Andy, and Freiburg, who had never won in München, and yet found themselves very early in the game 2 goals up.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a weird feeling of vertigo for all those connected with Freiburg. Of course, they moved on from Christian Streich, the coach who was in charge for pretty much all of those, the longest serving in the Bundesliga, who moved on at the start of last season to be replaced by Julian Schuster, who's done a really good job since. But 17 minutes in, they were 2-0 up. And off the back of that, you're probably thinking, hang on, what do we do? I guess the answer is let Bennett card the ball and decide what happens next in the game, because he's a brilliant goal to get them back into it. And after that, Olise run the show. A couple of goals for him, one for Harry Kane, of course, but it wasn't the Harry Kane show for once. Olise set up for Nicholas Jackson as well. And when Olise's really on it, he's just brilliant. You know, he's so good. I think it's easy to overlook because he's done so much of his good work in the Bundesliga, and so much of his brilliance at Palace was intermittent, skewed with injury, that I think sometimes we just need to go, hey, look, I know we talk about Harry Kane every week, but the reality is when Olise gets going, he is, especially with Jamal Musiala out, he's close to being Bayern's most important player. He's definitely in the top couple, and he's one of France's most important players as well. Now,
I was going to say, Andy, if you're getting into that French first 11 in a forward position, you know you're some kind of footballer. By the way, you may want to tell us what's going on in Milan. Another huge moment.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a penalty, which could make all the difference there. We're just about to find out. We've got the VAR symbol from the referee, and we're going to find out if in fact Inter have got a penalty that could bring them back into this. Now, as we said, Inter dominated the first half. A couple of really good saves from Mike Maignan, as we have come to expect from him. Then Christian Pulisic giving them the lead. After that save from Jan Sommer, he couldn't get the shot. He could get it out, but not away from Alexis Salamakers. And yeah, now Strahinja Pavlovic has been booked for a foul on Marcus Thuram. It's going to be a penalty to Inter. And of course, their former player, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, the player who never misses penalties, will be taking it.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much indeed. It's one of those penalties where the ball goes across, and after the cross, the bloke stands on his foot. 10 years ago, nobody would have batted an eyelid, but now we have to get busy giving as many penalties as we can to distort all football matches. Meanwhile, Andy, that's what I believe. There's far too many penalties, Andy, and it's because the officials are kind of looking for them now in a way that I don't think is just.
Broadly, Danny, I agree with you on this particular penalty. Don't agree with you, and Hakan Çalhanoğlu definitely doesn't agree with you that there are too many penalties because it makes him look like one of the best players in the world. I mean, of course, as he steps up to take this, he's only missed one penalty ever for Inter before, one which the keeper didn't save. It was in the home game against Napoli last year where he hit the post, and this has been saved by Mike Maignan, and Milan still lead.
Yes, of course it's been saved, because you know that Kelly's rule of football number 1 is if it's not a real penalty, they don't tend to score because they know full well that it's a nonsense. And I'm happy to say that I didn't think that was a penalty in a million years. And the guy arrived a nanosecond too late, slowed down. It looks like butchery, but it wasn't. And I'm delighted he's missed it. Nothing against him or Internazionale, but it just wasn't a penalty. Andy, it's very hard because of the amount of space that Bayern Munich take up mentally in the Bundesliga to think of other things. But we should talk about Bayer Leverkusen, because having sold their team and made themselves look not very good, they tiptoeing their way back into, if not contention for the title, certainly the upper reaches of the table.
Yeah, they are. And, there have been certain points this season where it's been tempting to say it's all going to hell in a handcart and it's a total disaster. You look at them getting hidings from really good teams like Bayern, like PSG. But the fact is that in many other games, you can see the talent they've got. Now, the talent isn't in the question. It's the fact that they fired their coach after 2 games. The new guy came in, had a load of new players, like a completely new team, not even really a team, just a set of players, and has had to try and mould it from there. And it has been difficult, but Kasper Hjulmand has done it really intelligently, I think. You look at the way he's empowered some of the more experienced players in that team, like Alejandro Grimaldo, like Jonas Hoffmann, who scored the first one as they won 3-1 at Wolfsburg yesterday. And in that first half, I mean, it could have been anything. They were running away from it. Now, when they conceded a goal, they had a little wobble, started to look a bit nervous. There was a second one that was allowed for Wolfsburg for a very, very marginal offside. So it was slightly less comfortable than it looked on paper and slightly less comfortable than it promised to be, certainly in the first half. But Leverkusen, I'm interested to see how they get on at City on Tuesday night, a game that I'm going to, because you do kind of look at them and you're tempted to think every time they play someone decent, they get thrashed. And I am kind of edging in that direction. But if they can go there and give a real performance of real personality, and of course they're back in the hunt, having beaten Benfica in a game really shouldn't have won last time out in the Champions League, then maybe they've got a chance of making that top 24.
Well, an amazing week of games in the Champions League.
Yes.
Matches involving, of course, 6 English teams, but lots of ex-winners and finalists playing each other. Back to Germany, Nick Voldemade has established himself as the centre-forward for the World Cup for Germany, but Dennis Undav, who would have thought he was in with a chance of being that a couple of years ago, has put his hand up and said, all right, I'll go as reserve then.
Yeah, because I think you look at Undav, and certainly the first season he had with Stuttgart, I think he was looking at it thinking, I'm going to be the starter, or I could be the starter for Germany in Euro 2024. Didn't quite happen. He had a few opportunities that he wasn't fully able to take. He wasn't able to properly establish himself. And like from there, you think, well, you know, you had the Nicholas Füllkrug moments in Euro 2024. Clearly, he's not a contender anymore because of the way it's gone at West Ham. And then, as you say, you look at the week that Voltemade has had, and he's completely propelled Germany in those 2 games against Luxembourg and Slovakia, the one where they won 6-0, especially getting them off the mark against Slovakia. And Undav, you think, well, it's going to take something to get himself in the squad because he was held back a lot by injury last season. I mean, he's such a pure finisher. I guess if you're talking about national team strikers, you wonder if he's going to be Ian Wright, someone who everyone knows is the best finisher in the league, but maybe doesn't get the international career that he deserves. I mean, it's still early enough for Undav, and the hat-trick he scored away at Dortmund yesterday, where Stuttgart were 2-0 down, and then they went 3-2 down, going into stoppage time, and got an even later equaliser. Just every finish he's got, it does remind you of an Ian Wright or a Sonny Anderson. Like, every finish is just such craft. He's the ultimate fox in the box, and they've needed him so much, especially, of course, with Stuttgart since Voltemade, and they weren't able to replace him on transfer time. We
haven't time to talk further about Karim Adeyemi, who also scored in that game for Dortmund. And
on the mystery box.
The mystery box. We haven't time, Andy. I'm being shouted at by producers. I'm happy to go back to that next week because it's one of my favourite stories in European football currently. Who's your star of the week in Germany?
Mine is going to be Asen Ouedraogo because he has had an amazing week. 19-year-old midfielder, leggy, elegant, really sort of eats up the ground in front of him. He started the season brilliantly for Leipzig. Came on against Slovakia, scored in that on his international debut, and scored again today as they beat Werder Bremen, and they are the second best team in the league at the moment at Leipzig.
Yeah, well, my star of the week is a late developer, the Bosnian striker Haris Tabakovic. Didn't play professional football really till he was 29 years of age. He's now at Mönchengladbach and scored in a 3-0 win at Hoffenheim. That's their third league win in a row, the significance of which is they were bottom of the table with no wins. Now they're up after this run to 11th. He got 2 goals, also got 2 assists. In his last 6 games, got 7 goals and 2 assists. And I should note, he scored in both the games that Bosnia played recently. So we'll be seeing him in those World Cup playoffs, which Bosnia have qualified. They nearly qualified by right at one stage against Austria. They were actually going through by right. And we'll preview all those little groups and those routes to the World Cup a little later in Trans Europe Express. Andy, given the importance of that game in Spain, can you give us some score updates?
Yeah, it's 75 minutes now. Still, Elche 1, Real Madrid 0. And if Real Madrid don't equalise, Barcelona are top, which is a bit of a turnaround. It's interesting, isn't it? We think of Eredivisie last season and those lead chokings, those multiple lead chokings by PSV, then by Ajax, and then almost by PSV again, but they held it out in the last couple of games. I mean, this is like a mini version of that. If we think of all footballers of accelerated reality, and so much happening at the moment, it is kind of that. You know, we had Barcelona going into the season as massive favourites, a fairly big lead at an early stage for Real Madrid, and then Barcelona having caught up with a few key players still out, which is really interesting. And look, this will pile the pressure on Xabi Alonso if they can't turn this around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still 1-0 in the last 10 minutes now to Milan in the home game. It's a home game for Inter in the Milan derby. Inter brought off Lautaro Martinez, brought on Boni in his place, and are about to bring on more forward replacements to try and snatch something from this game. Andy, let's talk about France then. We have to say that Paris Saint-Germain beat Le Havre by 3-0 to stay obviously top. We'll talk about them more in the preview of the Champions League, which we'll be doing at sort of 10:30. Obviously, they've got a really massive task ahead of them during the week when they host Tottenham Hotspur. But
Yes.
In the immediate just behind them in their slipstream, I want to talk about those two teams, Marseille and Lens. Marseille, we're so used to taking the mickey out of them on this programme, we must therefore be honest and say they're looking great, aren't they?
Yeah, they look really, really good. And I think it's interesting that they got the flip out of their system quite early in the season, really. So if you go back to the opening day and think that they lost at 10-man Rennes, and there was that fight in the dressing room afterwards, which precipitated the departure of Jonathan Rowe. And
we thought it was going to be business as usual.
Rabiot. Yeah, exactly. Especially with the extra stress of the Champions League on Roberto De Zerbi. Look, now they've had a couple of negative results in that, so we'll see how they go in that. But in terms of the league, they're looking consistent. They're looking reliable. De Zerbi's looking a calm, reasonable, and balanced influence, which he is not always. I think it's fair to say in his coaching career. So it's almost as if he has adapted to Marseille in a way that we thought he wouldn't. You know, you think he'd like lean into the mania, and he has at times. But now I think he's realised that the way to longevity there, he loves it there. He's always loved it. Is clear that he's going to have to, you know, come down from 10 to 8 in intensity. And I think it's really, really working. But they've got enviable attacking gifts, and that enabled them to take apart an East side who didn't play that badly, actually, as 5-1 would suggest in this game on Friday night. But Marseille are just so much better than them on every level. They're stacked up front. Mason Greenwood's scoring consistently. Of course, still doubts about him in the biggest games. I think it's fair to say that. This is a great game for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang as well. Igor Paschal is fit and starting to click. And I think what we're seeing from Aubameyang at the moment is really interesting as well. It's not just goal scoring, it's creation too. I mean, he's got 5 goals and 4 assists already off I think 6 or 7 starts, which is pretty amazing. Another couple in this. And he looks like the pre-Dortmund and Arsenal Aubameyang, the one who made the runs down the channels and set stuff up, which is ridiculous, really, because he's 36 and he's almost as fast as he ever was. So as long as they can keep a semi-competent defence, I think if you look at the injuries that PSG are going to have recur throughout this season, I think Marseille will be there or thereabouts.
Which means that the other team who is, causing there's a gap appearing between the top 3 and the rest in Ligue 1. And I mean, I shouldn't be surprised because Lens, they are what they are. But they beat Strasbourg this weekend to put themselves 6 points clear of anybody else they're third. The fourth best team is 6 points behind them. And you're going to say a lot of this is down to their coach, whereas Lyon was stupid enough to sack Pierre Sarge for no apparent reason. Lens were clever enough to pick him up.
John Textor was stupid enough to sell Pierre Sarge. I think we should be that clear on that.
All right.
And then sort of say to him on the way out, really, you should thank me for giving you a job in the first place. You know, nice touch. Why not, eh? And I think it's a push to say that Lyon have improved in the meantime. What Lens have done since then, with a lower budget, with so many good players that have left over the last couple of years, you know, you can name them all: Kusanov, Openda, Seko Fofana, Eliwai, who's obviously not doing great in Germany, but is a good player. So many of them have gone. And they're finding a way, like they absolutely played Strasbourg, who've got loads more budget than them, off the park yesterday. That they were really terrific. 1-1-0. They've got that formidable atmosphere behind them at the Bollard. They're doing fantastically. Now, it does look as if that gap to fourth place is going to be closed to 5 points, by the way, which is still significant, I'd say, at this time in the season, because Lille are currently beating Paris FC. A couple of goals in that for Olivier Giroud. It's 4-2 at the moment going into stoppage time. First time Giroud has scored in 2 months as well. Obviously a little bit older than Aubameyang, even when we're talking of ex-Arsenal strikers, but still good to see him back on the goal scoring trail.
Absolutely. Andy, we got quite a lot to get through in Italy, so why don't we go straight to our stars of the week in France? Who's yours?
Well, you know what? I'm going to go for an old Lyon Academy player, because I love this guy so much. Roman Del Castillo, who plays for Brest, who are struggling a bit this season. And it's a real old battle at the bottom that's developing, but they move themselves out of the bottom three. Of course, bottom two go down automatically, and the third goes into a playoff against the winner of the mini playoff in Ligue 2. And Del Castillo, he knew how much was riding on it when they got a penalty in stoppage time. They were 2-2 with Metz, who are their rivals to stay up even at this early stage in the season. Last penalty he took, he sort of David Beckham in Turkey'd it. It was against PSG as well, and his feet completely gave way from under him. He slipped over and sort of spooned it off, like sort of sandwich style to the side. So he showed the bravery to step up in stoppage time, took the penalty, it was saved. But it wasn't over, because 2 minutes later into stoppage time, they got another penalty.
Whoa.
He had the guts to take it and score it, and they went on to win the game.
Okay, well, your theory is, and I like the way you're expounding it in recent weeks, that soon professional football will be played by blokes in their late 30s and people who are still doing their GCSEs. So my star of the week is one of the latter. Adil Hamdani came off the bench for Lyon in a 0-0 draw against Auxerre, a terrible game by all accounts. But he's just 16, and he's the third youngest player in the 21st century to play for Lyon. One of them is the very little known William Gerbils, who now is at the aforementioned Paris FC, who are getting beaten by Lille. And the other is the much more famous and these days Premier League established Ryan Cherky. So that's some pretty good company to be in. So,
Danny, I'm going to have to cut in here. Live sport waits for no man. Real Madrid level through Dean Huyson, but Elche have gone straight back in front. Alvaro Rodriguez with a brilliant run through the centre of defence, smashing a low shot from the edge of the area to the right of Thibaut Courtois. 2-1 to Elche.
I love football, Andy. I love it. Tottenham Hotspur notwithstanding. Let's take a break. When we come back, we should get into the final whistle in Milan, and we'll talk about everything that's been going on in Italy. You're listening to Trans Europe Express with me, Danny Kelly, and the great man, Andy Brassell. Yeah, that talkSPORT breakfast is, of course, back tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. And yes, you're hearing this right. It's time for Big Alan to step up and host for all 5 days. But will Big Al make the full 5 days? Find out on talkSPORT breakfast from tomorrow morning, when Alan will be joined by Rangers legend Ali McCoy from 6 o'clock until 10. Don't be late. Andy, another goal in Spain.
Yes, but before we go to that, it has finished in Milan. Inter 0, Milan 1. I'll read you through what that means for the table in a second. But yes, another goal in Alicante. Elche 2, Real Madrid 2. It's Jude Bellingham who's got the equaliser. Now, it's a free kick on the left-hand side, the Elche right, from Trent Alexander-Arnold, headed back by Dean Huijsen, dropped to Bellingham. He forced a great save from Iñaki Peña, the former Barcelona goalkeeper, of course, and it was trickling wide, and just by a whisker, Kylian Mbappe kept it in, pushed it back, and Bellingham just towed the rebound into the roof of the net, and it's 2-2.
OK, well, listen, thank you for that. We'll talk about Spain a little later. And Italy, as you say, the game has ended in Milan, and it's a really important result because Inter have been beaten at home, technically, by AC by 1-0. And that, I think, we have to start accepting that Milan are in the title race, Andy.
Well, what we have to start accepting, Danny, is they are a Maximiliano Allegri side again. And this was classic Allegri smash and grab. We know he was the most Juventus coach ever, fino alla fine. Just get it done and nothing else matters. And you feel as if he's brought a bit of that to Milan. Now, I feel they needed that after last season. Remember, completely missed Europe, which is quite hard to do in Serie A these days because there are so many European places. And I guess in terms of this season, it's given him an advantage. It's given him a chance to work on the players. They're very well drilled. They're defensively very good. So Inter had most of the ball. They had all of the chances. They need most of the luck as well. Mike Maignan, by the way, absolutely outstanding. Christian Pulisic got the winner, following in after that saved shot from Alexis Salamakers. But it's all about Maignan. He saves a penalty from Hakan Çalhanoğlu, which no one else has done while Çalhanoğlu's been at Inter, by the way. The only other penalty he missed was off the post when they played Napoli at San Siro about this time last year. The post did Maignan a couple of favours, though. They hit the woodwork a couple of times, Inter. They will be wondering what they needed to do to win this. Of course, I think you could still argue that they are the better side and maybe even the best side in Serie A. Can I just read you through the table after that, Danny? This is 12 games in, so we're nearly a third into the season. Roma top, 27 points. Who saw that coming? Milan, 25. Napoli, 25. Inter, 4th, 24. Bologna, 24. And Juventus in 6th, back on 20.
Yeah, it's really, really fantastically competitive.
Yeah, it is.
One thing, just before we finish on that one and go on to Roma, who, as you say, now end the weekend top. Once again, while players like Rafael Leao and others were being substituted, Luka Modric, a full 90 minutes, a full 95 minutes in the centre of Milan's midfield. Could he be turning out to be extraordinary, sort of unexpected transfer of the season? He's playing every minute as Milan go trophy hunting. Incredible. As you say, Roma are now top. They won 3-1 at what we must always describe now as Jamie Vardy's Cremonese. They looked good, and there was a moment of deep relief for at least one Republic of Ireland player and for people like myself who follow the Republic.
Yeah, there was. So, look, Roma are already in front at half-time. Goal by Matthias Soulé, who's proving so important to them, particularly in the absence of Paulo Dybala. And they had this weird cobbled together front line because, of course, they've got a plague of injuries up front at the moment. No Dybala, who injured himself taking a penalty. It's all the rage. KDB did it as well, as we know, with Napoli this season. And then there was the injury to Artem Dovbyk. He's out for about halfway through a month out. And then Evan Ferguson had already been out injured. He was only fit enough to make the bench today, Evan Ferguson, but he did come on in the second half and set up for his first Roma goal. But it was brilliant because, of course, Gianpiero Gasperini has been such a champion of Ferguson, such a believer in him. And just before that, Gasparini, who's still quite, he's not dead Serby, and he looks like a cute, cuddly old man. He's pretty fierce, I would say, and he loves a row with an official. Although he said on this occasion he didn't actually have a row, so he didn't get the most of his money for the red card. The referee gave him 2 bookings in double quick time, and off he went up to the stand. And he was half the way on the steps up to the stand when Ferguson scored, and so you could see him walking up the staircase. And then he just started to go mad and start punching the air because he was so delighted about it. I guess from a Republic of Ireland perspective and from a Roma perspective, Ferguson has got ready just at the right time, because if he'd been fit a couple of weeks ago, maybe Troy Parrott wouldn't have had all the minutes to do all his stuff.
Well, it's one of the things
worked out well for everyone.
It's one of those things we'll talk about when we talk about those little qualification tournaments now for the remaining European places. The gap between the draw and the matches is nearly 4 months. So anything could happen, but a fully fit and firing Evan Ferguson with Troy up front would allow Hallgrimsson, the Republic of Ireland manager I talked about today, to play longer, which is what they need to do. They have real good, tough tackling pros in midfield. They don't have the skill to be messing about with the ball. And as we saw in their recent run of results, get the ball forward, put the opposition under pressure. Jack Charlton, bless him, in his celestial throne, would have been smiling down on some of the stuff the Republic did. Speaking of famous managers, Antonio Conte seems to have survived his holiday.
Yeah, it turned out the little break from each other renewed the love. It's all worked wonderfully well. Napoli played Atalanta, a team who actually do have a new coach, yesterday. Napoli were really pretty good, I thought. And it's funny because there's been so much drama this season, as you would expect, I think, from the Conte De Laurentiis dynamic, if you're really thinking about it, and especially with some of the results that have happened recently. But this was a comprehensive win. They're 3-0 up at half time. David Neres came back into the team, fit again, played really well, scored a couple of goals, linked really with Rasmus Højlund as well. A goal for Noah Lang, who, remember, probably started all this on the sly when he sort of said, Antonio Conte's only spoken to me once since I've been here. This was back when they lost 6-2 to PSV Eindhoven in the Champions League. So Noah Lang sort of threw that little hand grenade into the camp and then took his place back on the subs bench. But he started this game, played well, scored, and then sort of like surveyed the territory to say, it's all going so well now. That's down to me. I got us having a discussion about it. But it's funny, there is still a bit of residual tension there. You had Scamacca pulling one back in the second half, and then there was a little bit of a wobble, and you could tell that the ghosts of the recent past were not completely banished. But in the end, good win. And I would say they're back in the title mix, but they were never out of it. That's the whole point. The thing is with Napoli and with Antonio Conte, you can't say, if we all take a deep breath realistically, because those words don't belong in the sentence and don't belong in the discussion. But I think you and I, not being in the middle of it, can say, if we take a deep breath realistically, they were never out of the title race, were they? And, they're still a genuine contender, as they always were.
And what about Atalanta, Andy? We report one week that they look like they're getting back to their entertaining best, and then the wheels spin, and then they get beaten the following week.
Yeah, that's right, and I think that it's going to take a while. I mean, Palladino's a good coach. He's got some good players. Lars Sivertsen was talking of throwing hand grenades into happy camps, was saying to me in the week on the Continent podcast that he says, if you look at the XG numbers under Ivan Juric wasn't really that bad. After all, I'm sure there are a lot of fans, especially in Southampton and Rome, who would be dying to disagree with you over that. But nevertheless, he is the past rather than the future. But it's so congested at the top there. But it's interesting, as we were saying, going through that table is very tight, except there is a gap between the top 5, a little bit like the gap between top 3 and elsewhere in France.
Okay, let's do our stars of the week. I'll go first, if I may. Tommaso Pobega. I was at Milan, where people thought had a lot of hope for him, but he's long since moved on. Very underrated player. Bologna won 3-0 at Udinese. Tommaso got the first 2. Pretty good finishes as well. And that result, as you were reading out there, put them temporarily second. So he's part of a Bologna team that perhaps are doing even better than they would have thought they were going to do. Who's your star of the week in Italy, Andy?
My star of the week is Rolando Mandragora. Always liked him because of his name, always liked him because of his ability to score an extraordinary goal. And he did the latter, certainly, and of course he did the former because he's always called Rolando Mandragora, in the game against Juventus yesterday. And that was a big deal because, of course, Fiorentina have changed coach. It's been a bit of a mess all season, and they absolutely hate Juventus. So when they went a goal down and the crowd were the Artemio Franchi were already having a lot of chit with Dusan Vlahovic, who they hate and hates them now as well. And there were reports actually that he was receiving some racist abuse, so that the league are looking into this at the moment. But they took the lead, Juventus. Mandragora got the equaliser in a game where Moise Kean hit the woodwork as well. Him being back on form is important. So still no wins for them yet in the league this season, the complete opposite of their Conference League form, but they are off the bottom at least. And most importantly for Fiorentina fans this weekend, they didn't lose to Juventus.
Listen, thank you very much indeed. That first hour has rocketed by. We've got every bit as much stuff to squeeze into the second and third hours edition of this edition of Trans Europe Express. Thanks for listening to us. Hope you can stay with us till midnight. We'll be back very, very soon here.
Monaco, Singapore, Las Vegas. What do they all have in common? Well, they're all F1 street circuits. 20 years ago, the sports only visited 3 a year. From 2026, there'll be 10, despite the actual racing often being worse. So why? Why are there so many street circuits? Cars racing past the Casino Monte Carlo is one of the iconic images in all of sport. But in the last few years, it's been joined in the Street Circuit Club by the dazzling Grand Prix on the Las Vegas Strip, in Miami, Azerbaijan and others. And there's no sign of the trend slowing down. The streets of Madrid have also gotten involved, and there are conversations about Grand Prix in the capitals of Thailand and Rwanda. But fitting them in means we say goodbye to classic circuits like Hockenheim and Imola, angering fans who are still packing out the European tracks like Spa, the Hungaroring and Monza. And these generally produce more wheel-to-wheel action than street circuits too. At Silverstone in 2025, there were a total of 26 on-track overtakes. At Monaco, 4. I'm an F1 enthusiast. Even I struggle with that. But it appears to be a good step. In 2025, there was a record 2.3 million strong viewership for the Monaco Grand Prix in the US alone. Meanwhile, for the British Grand Prix several weeks later, 1.5 million tuned in. So why are we seeing this drive towards street circuits? Well, no prizes for guessing. Money. Formula One demands a fee of between $20 and $60 million for the rights to even hold an event. In total, including sponsorships, it's believed officials in Saudi Arabia pay almost $100 million for their race. The huge fees are possible because of the street track's city centre locations, as people staying at hotels at inflated prices and tourist sites brimming with visitors mean the cities rake the cash back in when the race comes to town. So it makes financial sense for Formula One and the cities, but will it cost the sport in the long run if F1 races are too boring? After all, nothing beats the roar of an F1 car as it flies through the forests of Europe, or mechanics watching a storm coming across the humid Asian countryside. Take that away and, well, you may as well just watch American IndyCar.
Yeah, welcome back to the second of 3 hours of tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express. Just bear with us on social media and things over the next month. Because of the cricket, we'll often be having different starting times. We'll still be here roughly late Sunday night, but we've got 1 or 2 later starts because of the cricket. Although, if the games are going to be over in 2 days, it won't be a problem at all, will it? I'm Danny Kelly. Alongside me, as always, Andy Brassell. During the next hour, we'll be talking about everything that's been going on in Spain. We'll have Mbappe watch in just a second. And we'll be looking at Champions League games. Just roll these around your mouth. Arsenal against Bayern Munich. PSG and Spurs. Chelsea play Barcelona. Atletico Madrid play Inter. Former winners Ajax take on Benfica. Former winners. Neither of them have had a point so far. It's an amazing week. We'll have all that very, very soon here on Trans Europe Express. Meanwhile, we started the show with Paul Pogba's return for 5 minutes of play for Monaco this evening after 2.5 years without playing. This is his English Twitter feed, X feed. This is Paul himself. Last night was unforgettable. Stepping back onto the pitch after 2 years away meant more to me than I can express. To the fans, thank you for the love, the energy and the belief. To everyone who stood behind me, supported me and pushed me through every moment of the journey, I'm deeply grateful. This debut wasn't just mine, it belonged to all of you who never stopped supporting me. And there's some lovely film of him in that all-yellow kit where he's got his socks rolled up so they look like Victorian ladies' stockings, making his way out onto the pitch. And he looks in pretty good shape, but of course he always looked in pretty good shape once he's on the football pitch because he is a fantastic athlete. Very nice there, nice words by himself about his return to the game. Now, though, we may turn our attention to another Frenchman, because it's time for this.
Sa carrière, le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé! Mbappé!
Little give and go, Mbappe's in! Oh, it's 2-2! He scored twice in 2 minutes!
Tête de Kylian Mbappé. Allez, Kylian!
First of all, Andy, I guess you'd better tell me the final score in Elche.
Yeah, Elche 2, Real Madrid 2. Brilliant game. Really, really brilliant game. Elche led twice in that game, of course. And Real Madrid, though, will have a few regrets. They could have won it right at the end. Xabi Alonso thought they won it, a combo between Eduardo Camavinga and Gonzalo Garcia, the young striker, who, of course, did so well after being promoted from the B team of the Club World Cup when Alonso had first arrived, and almost ended in a winning goal for Real Madrid. The home captain, Victor Chust, was sent off in those last couple of minutes as well, so that they had an advantage. I mean, I think there's a few things worth picking over in the game. Firstly, even though Mbappe, the name above the door in this section, didn't score, he was lively, had a very good game. Brilliant assist actually for the equaliser from Jude Bellingham. As we said, it was a great save from Iñaki Peña, who had a very, very good game, wearing what suspiciously looked like a Barcelona goalkeeper's kit, even though he was playing for Elche. I mean, you know, that would be the old red rag to the bull, wouldn't it? But it was a great save. His last great save was the one from Jude Bellingham from the knockback by Huijsen. Looked like it was going wide the post, and Mbappe so alert to just about keep it in, and then it was towed into the top of the net by Jude Bellingham for the second equaliser. Now, they spent a while verifying that, because it was Vinicius Junior was right in front of Peña as the ball came back in, but he was trying to follow the ball back in, and if anything, Peña looked like he tripped him over. Now, of course, the minute the ball hit the back of the net, Iñaki Peña started holding his face as if Vinicius had done something to him, which he clearly hadn't. So there was lots of argument on the touchline, to verification, and eventually that goal was allowed. That 1 point does mean that Real Madrid stay on top. They're a point in front of Barcelona at the moment. So they're on 32. Barcelona are on 31. Atletico Madrid, who we'll talk about in the next section, by the way, only 4 points off the top now after their win at Getafe this afternoon.
Sorry, you momentarily distracted me there, Andy, with the talk of somebody being near the goalkeeper when the ball goes into the net. I'm making no excuses for Tottenham. They were played off the pitch by Arsenal, and then they got this. They got their bottoms properly spanked. The second goal, not one, not two, 3 Arsenal players yards offside in the goalkeeper's eye line, and nobody even said, "Are they going to look at that?" Oh no, just carry on. 1 week, the slightest a player on the corner of the penalty area who happens to have the goalkeeper's name in his phone, that's regarded as that you have to disallow the goal. And that one today, they've got this. They've gone mad. I'll have another platform. I'll talk about this on H&J tomorrow. The 2 English superstars at Real Madrid, Kylian Mbappe's teammates, Thomas Tuchel is having to walk a sort of not a tightrope, but certainly on very thin ice with the pair of them over one way and another. First of all, he says he's going to go and talk to Trent Alexander-Arnold about what's happening with him.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he feels like he's been a bit lonely because, of course, he's not been playing much, mainly due to that bad hamstring injury. He's just been working himself back into the team. In fact, the start tonight is his first La Liga start for Real Madrid since 20th of August. I mean, that's a long time, isn't it? If we're talking about adaptation, and that's nothing to do with him, by the way. Of course, they've been juggling.
Fresh for the World Cup. Keep him fresh for the World Cup.
Well, exactly. There we go. And it looks as if he'll be needed, doesn't it? So I think you have to bear that in mind. Of course, the game that he started in the Champions League against Marseille in September was the one where he tore his hamstring. But it was interesting to see him given a go in a game like this. And of course, they're a bit stretched at the moment, but to see him given the trust of Xabi Alonso in a game like this, where Elche, as the game proved, a really tough opposition, promoted, but they're good. There's no doubt about it. That they're streetwise, they play really good football. The fans are noisy there as well. And I guess there were two sides to the Trent Alexander-Arnold performance. I guess there will be people who look at the edited highlights and look at the opening for Elche by Alex Febas, and the ball around the corner is brilliant touch actually, Herman Valera, which was just around the side of Trent Alexander-Arnold, and he didn't end up quite getting to Febas in time. I guess people who want to find a defensive stick to beat TAA with will use that and go from there. I think it's a brilliant touch by Herman Valera. It could have happened to anyone, but interestingly, both the Real Madrid goals by Dean Huijsen and by Jude Bellingham came from Trent Alexander-Arnold set pieces. And we spent so much of our time, well, when we're talking, exactly, Danny, when we're talking about, the Premier League being dominated by set pieces, well, it's not just the Premier League, is it? If we were talking about Bayern and Freiburg yesterday, the goals where Freiburg went 2-0 up, both set pieces. Yeah. We see it everywhere. And Trent Alexander-Arnold, perhaps, could be even more valuable now to Real Madrid than he was when they agreed to sign him, for that very reason.
Because the game is changing, fair enough.
Yeah, so rapidly.
Meanwhile, in this, that's to do, as I keep saying, they won't admit it yet, but that's to do with artificial intelligence, where you can now run hundreds of programs about possible outcomes if we do this with that player or block that player, whereas before on a computer or doing it on a training pitch would take weeks to get it right. Now you can get whether it's liable to be a success or not in a matter of seconds. Wait till we get onto quantum computers and you'll be doing it 1 trillion times faster. I don't know what football will be like then. I know it will be played by teenagers and old men because you told me. The relationship between the aforementioned Thomas Tuchel and Jude Bellingham, arguably England's best player, has caused consternation in England. People are having their say. Race has been brought into it. All sorts of things have been said. What's the reaction been in Spain, Andy, to the apparent rift between England manager and his star midfielder?
Well, curiosity. I think that's clear. I mean, it's been widely reported, but largely without comment. I think for two reasons. One, that if we're being honest, Spanish societal understanding of racial politics is quite a long way behind where we are in the UK, and we've seen this on a number of occasions in Spanish football. So they simply don't get the issue. And I think the second part of it is in Madrid, they don't really care about what happens outside Real Madrid. That is the most important thing.
That's the pertinent thing.
Remember, this was why there was this breakdown in the relationship between Gareth Bale and Real Madrid, because of course we all think of it being, the Wales Golf Madrid in that order flag, which obviously anywhere else would be considered a good-natured bit of fun, but definitely not there. That the reason that was so badly received is because it doubled down on something that they thought before, like when Bale was carrying an injury and went off on international duty anyway when Wales were playing Andorra. Now, their view of it, which I think is like at least a little bit hypocritical, because it's never a view that would be expressed towards a South American player, because we know how much going back to Brazil and Argentina means to those players. But the sense was with Bale that by going a little bit injured onto international duty for a game that they considered a small one. Who are they to judge? But nevertheless, that's the way that it was judged. There was a sense that he was being disloyal to Real Madrid in a way by doing that. That he was putting himself at risk and prejudicing his employer. Now, that may seem ridiculous, but that is the moment where the seed was planted. And from then, it grew, and that flag really doubled down on that moment. And it's just so extraordinary. Even like with Gareth Bale being out of Real Madrid for a couple of years, his Real Madrid legacy is so complicated. You're talking about a guy who, and let's see what Jude Bellingham does, but you're talking about a guy who's the most successful British player overseas ever. Like hands down, no question. I love you, John Charles, but let's be honest, hands down, it's Gareth Bale. And yet, how he's perceived by a lot of Real Madrid fans and a lot of people who cover Real Madrid for a living in painstaking detail, you get a lot of different opinions. And this is a guy who went out there, scored them big goals and won them a load of major trophies.
I mean, you mentioned, most successful British player overseas. That's undeniable. But I think it's an argument. He's one of the best British players of all time. He's in my top 5, Andy. And sometimes he's number 1. Then I change my mind again, and George Best appears. The Madrid, of course, it wouldn't be Madrid unless they were arguing with everybody, including arguing about Kylian Mbappe's ankle, and then arguing with Javier Tebas, the head of the Spanish authorities, at the Real Madrid AGM. Yeah,
that's right. So
2 separate arguments.
Two separate arguments, but 2 quite strongly expressed ones. Now, of course, Kylian Mbappe, after France qualified by beating Ukraine for the World Cup, was let off the big trip to Baku, which I think was sensible all round. We know he's been nursing this ankle knock. Real Madrid didn't even bother examining him before they confirmed that he would play at Elche this weekend. By the way, he looked fine and played really well. We have to underline that. But I think if you needed an example underlining the contempt in which Real Madrid hold pretty much all national associations, and even one as big as France, that was pretty clear. And then, of course, there was the Real Madrid annual general meeting this week, where there was a speech given by Florentino Perez, which had, very strong anti-UEFA, pro-Super League, without mentioning the Super League, kind of undertones. And Javier Tebas, of course, clapped back big time, where he accused Real Madrid of trying to subvert football, and Florentino Perez of trying to subvert football, and all the rest of it. Just another week in Spanish football.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Why don't we look at the rest of Spain next year on Trans Europe Express? Yeah, listen to this. Thanks to our friends at Virgin Hotels Las Vegas, we're giving you and a friend the chance to win the ultimate trip of a lifetime to Las Vegas. Picture this, you and your best mate flying upper class from London to Vegas, checking into a luxury spa villa for 4 incredible nights at Virgin Hotels Las Vegas, cheering from the stands as the Las Vegas Raiders take on the Kansas City Chiefs, and to top it all off, £5,000 in cash to play with. So clear your calendar from January the 2nd to January the 7th, 2026, of course, because nothing starts like a new year like Vegas. Good luck, everyone.
21 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text WIN to 83338. Text at £2 plus standard network rates. Bill payer's permission required. Or call 03434239761. Calls are charged at standard rate. All entries must be received by the 28th of November at 4 p.m. This is a network promotion. Run across talkSPORT, Virgin Radio UK and Talk. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Andy, before we go on to Spain, and at the risk of getting us, anyone who puts this into a search engine, getting us taken off air, do you know what a tush push is?
I think so.
Okay, well, we've just seen the classic example. I'm watching the American football game now between divisional rivals, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Philadelphia Eagles, the current world champions, of course. The Eagles, of course, are handing the Cowboys their backside and much else on a plate. They're 21-0 up. Their most recent touchdown was a tush push. For those of you who don't know it, they developed this in the last couple of years, Philadelphia, where their quarterback, if they're about a yard out from the line, their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, doesn't try to pass the ball or run with it. He just puts up his jumper, and a load of great big blokes get behind his backside and push him over the line. And because I know you're interested in all sports, this has become so impossible to defend that other clubs are now campaigning to have it outlawed. And I think it will be outlawed in the NFL very soon because it's just a move because of the size of the players behind Jalen that's just impossible to defend. And I don't think they like that. It's 21-0 to the Philadelphia Eagles at the moment.
So is this the show on which talkSPORT are breaking the news that John McGinn is going to be switching codes?
I didn't know that. What do you mean?
Well, if there's a tush push to be had,
I see.
Surely McGinn's getting involved, right?
You're absolutely
funny,
right.
Such is the telepathy between us, Danny, that I've also just switched over to Eagles versus Cowboys, and I was going to ask you to explain some elements of it to me. Like, are the Cowboys always this bad? Despite the fact, of course, they're one of the biggest names in sport. But you've explained an even greater nuance to me, for which I'm very grateful.
The nuance here, Andy, is that this is a divisional game that almost guarantees Philadelphia into the playoffs. The trouble is the two other teams in that division are so poor that it's very likely that the Cowboys will make the playoffs, even with their terrible negative record, because they're going to finish second. There are one or two other sort of twists and turns, but at the moment, even though they're so bad, of course, they're not going to go to the Super Bowl with this team. It's another blowout year for the Cowboys. Let's then talk about Spain. And a big story there, of course, is the return of Barcelona FC. God, those 2.5 years have flown by. 2.5 years since they left the new camp. They were back there for the game against Athletic Bilbao. And boy, were Athletic compliant on the night, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, it's fair to say they took their shoes off at the door, Danny, and brought chocolates and flowers. So, yeah, it's extraordinary. Over 900 days since Barcelona had played there. And bear in mind, last time they were at Camp Nou, Lamine Yamal wasn't a key player. That's how long ago it was. He certainly was in this game. Look, it was nice and easy. They didn't really have to prove anything. Robert Lewandowski cracked Athletic's resistance nice and early with the opening goal. The first goal back in Camp Nou, scored by Lewandowski, of whom there's been so much speculation over his future recently. Yamal was fantastic, as you would expect. There was a little bit where, when it was 1-0, Athletic created a couple of chances. But really, everyone had a great time. Now, of course, when it fully opens and is properly operational, the new Camp Nou will have 105,000 capacity. At the moment, it's 45, which is more than we were expecting when it opened. But of course, they've hung out a little bit longer to get the necessary permissions through. Of course, getting the current permission through and having a 45,000 capacity not only means that they'll sell out and it'll be a great atmosphere, but it means that UEFA have done something that they wouldn't normally do, and midway through the league/group stage have allowed Barcelona to return home. So it was confirmed this week that the next Champions League game that Barcelona play on home, which is on Tuesday, December the 9th, against Eintracht Frankfurt, will be in Camp Nou. They don't have to stay at Montjuic for the rest of the group phase.
I've got no problem with that, provided that's consistent across all clubs in all leagues.
I mean, it's not, but
no, I know.
It's no bad thing either.
No, and of course, with all due respect to the now long-forgotten TV television stars, the Teletubbies, will the new Camp Nou be called Camp Nunu? I hope so. I really do hope so. Andy, talk to us, because we've talked so much about American football. We're running out of time for Spain. By all means, complain to Jack Hoban, everybody. He's on Twitter, our producer. Two derbies, one in Madrid, one in Valencia.
Yeah, the derby that no one wants between Getafe and Atletico. And of course, if there's one team that's going to make it difficult for Atletico, it's Getafe. You know, the anti-football heroes of La Liga. They made it super tough for them. So I'm sure it would be immensely satisfying to Diego Simeone that they were able to close the gap to 4 points, as we were saying earlier at the top, by a beautiful move that was finished off by an own goal by Domingos Duarte in the last 10 minutes in that game, which is another great win for Atletico. And I think an example of the usefulness of their bench. On the other side, the one you're talking about is, of course, the Valencia derby between Valencia and Levante. And Valencia thought they'd won it at one point during the second half, only to have the goal rather controversially ruled out. So they thought, you know what, stuff you, we're going to score an even better winning goal. And Hugo Duro, favourite of this programme, of course, Hugo Hard, scored a brilliant overhead kick to win the game. Valencia out of the bottom three. And Carlos Corberán and his team are kind of, by winning this derby and doing it in such courageous style, I kind of got the fans a little bit back on side as well, which is really, really important, because Mestalla is like hostile when they feel that the team isn't giving it their all.
Listen, my star of the week in Spain, Andy, is Isco and his magnificent beard. Out of the team with a broken leg all this season, but extended his contract during the week, came on as a sub for Betis against Girona. Guess what? He set up the equaliser. That beard is amazing. Who's your star of the week?
Ander Barrenechea of Real Sociedad, improving at the moment, and got a 3-1 win at Osasuna, which is no mean feat. They were 1-0 down. Osasuna is a super tough place to go to, but really showing their mettle. Barrenechea sealed it by scoring from the halfway line.
Listen, thank you very much indeed. I don't need to do a fanfare of trumpets here. Just know that this is one of the great weeks in the Champions League. Extraordinary fixtures. We'll be previewing them over the next half hour here on Trans Europe Express. Yeah, as Jeff was saying there, we've got commentaries for you on some of the big games in the Champions League. In actual fact, there's so many extraordinary games this week on Tuesday and Wednesday, we couldn't cover them all with commentaries. They're just too many. Andy, why don't we start then for the next 10 or so minutes with the games involving some of the English clubs. You can't cram them all in quite. I mean, obviously, the top one, Arsenal, in fantastic form, albeit they didn't have to get out of second gear today, take on Bayern Munich in North London. Huge game.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait for this. Now, look, we can all try and say, well, it's just a league phase game. It's not knockouts. But I think it's like if you see regular seasons in the NBA between two games that you know are going to be in the back ends of the playoffs. They're looking for something by which to measure themselves. If you know you're a contender, you want that challenge. You want to really feel the edge and judge where you are. And Arsenal and Bayern are both within that group. I think if you look at the start of the season, you'd probably say most people would have PSG, Barcelona and Real Madrid down as the favourites to win the Champions League all over again, and maybe Liverpool at the start of the season. But actually, Arsenal and Bayern absolutely deserve to be within that group. Now, look, I know there are possible reservations about both of them for various reasons. I think with Arsenal, you look at the fact that they weren't quite able to make the most of the opportunities they had in the last couple of seasons. They feel very different to me this season.
Hugely different squad now.
Yeah.
I mean, the younger players have improved. Yeah.
I don't just think it's the squad. I think it's the attitude. I think it's the feeling around them. And I would say the same about Bayern, actually, and the way they came out the traps this season. Now, it's funny because they're several incarnations removed from Pep Guardiola Bayern. But of course, his aim, going back to when he was with Barcelona B, was to roll with a small squad. And funnily enough, when Harry Kane was telling us, I think we've got a really quite small squad this season. Now, of course, they've still got Jamal Musiala and a few others to come back. Alphonso Davies, notably, in the new year. But actually, maybe it's working for them because they look so tight and so well drilled and so on it.
Yes, the issue with that going on, Harry, was if something happened, say, to Kimmich, then suddenly the world is a very different place, whereas Arsenal seem to have depth in every single position. I mean, it'll be. Are you going to that one, Andy? You're going to about 10 games this week.
Yeah, I think I'm going to Arsenal and City this week.
We're going to City.
And ended up somewhere even more exotic.
Yeah, I know you are. It's amazing. We'll talk about that. The other North London side takes their wares to Paris Saint-Germain in a rematch of the Super Cup final.
They do. And I don't know about for you, Danny, but that seems about a million years ago for me. I guess that's an indication of just where we are with football, about how much happens and how quickly everything moves on. But PSG, I think if you look at the numbers when they played Le on last night, you'd say, okay, comfy win, 3-0. They had 30 plus shots. Job's a good one. They were a little bit vulnerable, I thought, against one of the weakest teams in the division. I thought Le were kind of playing with house money, went there and had a go, which had a difference as well. But it's funny because Lucas Chevalier had one of his best games for PSG. But it's weird that he had to. It's really strange that he had to. And I think we've seen, when you go back to last season, when you look at Aston Villa were able to create chances in Paris, even though they were hammered for most of that game out there. Of course, they came back and then some in the game in Birmingham in the second leg. Arsenal were able to go out there and create chances with, as we were saying before, not quite as good a team and not quite as much of a team that believed in itself as the one that seems to be at present. So there is an opportunity to get at PSG. Having said that, I think the advantages for them is you see some of the players coming back. This was the return of Nuno Mendes, who was great, as you would expect, because he is great. They were able to give little breathers to the likes of Fabian Ruiz, Kvaratskhelia, Barcola, who plays about 100 games a season, as we know, and apparently he's inconsistent off the back of that. Who knew? And he came on and scored. There so many options they've got, and they're able to give breathers to the right players as well. They're able to leave Marquinhos on the bench. So I mean, it's going to be a tough Spurs. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But not impossible for them to make an impression. Having said that,
yes, we'll see how they line up to try and play for throw-ins. City take on Leverkusen. Chelsea take on Barcelona in a repeat of one of the maddest games of Champions League football ever. Who can ever forget Michael Ballack chasing the referee from one end of the pitch to the other? But I'm more interested in one or two of these other games here, Andy. The game at Anfield between Liverpool and PSV ought to be straightforward for Liverpool, but nothing straightforward for them at the moment. And the fact that they're not going to retain their league title, and I'm happy to say that, because it's true, but puts more pressure now on these Champions League games. Yeah, it really does.
And look, at Anfield, they've been formidable in the Champions League. There's no doubt about that. But PSV have found themselves a real good run of form at the moment. Now, they've worked themselves into the position where they're 6 points clear at the top of the Eredivisie. You could argue that this isn't particularly relevant to this, and to be honest, they weren't very good at NAC Breda this weekend. They won the game with a Hustil header, but they needed a really good performance from Mate Kovac in goal to see it over the line. But what is so good about PSV is they will play fearlessly wherever, and they will play to have a go wherever. So if there's any chance of them getting close to Liverpool, and we don't know that that's the case, if Liverpool did start to click and were able to put in a solid game, of course they could beat PSV comfortably. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But having said that, I think the interesting thing is the fact that Arne Slot from Feyenoord and Peter Bosz, who's been at PSV for a while now, know each other pretty well and know each other tactically pretty well, which I think is interesting. I mean, obviously, the Peter Bosz side of that is, I know how Arne plays. I'll just play as I do in all the other games because I've only got one way of playing. So, that's one side of it. But I think that what's most relevant to this game is the fact that PSV's current really good run of form goes back to something we mentioned earlier, them beating Napoli 6-2, which is still one of the maddest results of the season, really, when you think about it, and is still... the effects of it are still being felt, certainly in Naples as well. And so you look at the couple of injuries they got up front, you look at the fact they lost Luc de Jong in the summer, you look at Ruben van Bommel being out for the season, and you're wondering, how are they going to find a way to score goals? They've got a ton of players who can score goals. And I tell you who's playing really well and who set up the winner for Till yesterday, Ivan Perisic. It'd be really interesting to see him have a go at the right side of that Liverpool defence.
And the other game, Andy, that's catching my eye of the ones involved in the English teams is Marseille versus Newcastle. When the draw was made, I should say that was like a million years ago now. Newcastle would have thought, well, Marseille are often a bit strange, but we've seen how good they are this year in France. And Newcastle's away form is, this is probably the wrong thing. Their away form is nothing to write home about, is it?
No, it's true. And I think the interesting thing here, though, is Marseille really need to win this. They've had a couple of defeats recently in the Champions League. They've lost 3 out of 4. A couple of defeats that they feel they didn't really deserve. If they've not been moaning about refs domestically, they've definitely been moaning about refs in a Champions League context. And this is a game that they've really got to get something out of, especially after losing that home game to Atalanta. Now, they won the home game against Ajax. That's the game they have won. But as we know, Ajax are just not a good team. This current incarnation of Ajax, especially at this level, they're not a good team. So it's hard to judge whether Marseille are actually capable in the Champions League. And we talk about Newcastle's poor away form. They're great at Union Saint-Gilloise, really good. So Newcastle can park all those hang-ups, really, from the Premier League, which, they're partly done, of course, with that win against Manchester City yesterday. But I think the way that they're attacking the Champions League, they've got real poise about them, I think, in the Champions League, in terms of riding out the difficult bits and making the most of those spells of momentum, which, as we always say, is what the Champions League is about.
Yeah, their midfield gives them a stability in these continental games that I think really serves them very, very well indeed. Listen, we'll have a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the other ties, including a monster one in Madrid, a really mad one between two former winners, multiple winners of the trophy who both got no points. And I'm always going on about how Turkish teams don't bat to their average in the European tournaments. Well, we'll see an exception to that this week. That's all coming up next year on Trans Europe Express. Yeah, we've already talked about many of the clubs from England who are in the Champions League. There's still some very, very big ties out with that group. Andy, and none bigger, I think, looking at it on paper, and none more delicious than Atletico Madrid, who host Inter Milan, who have done very well in this tournament over the last couple of years. There's no reason to think they won't go deep again.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Danny. And they'll be furious with what happened tonight as well, especially as they had so much of the game. So it's important for them to bounce back from that. Of course, the real suspicion we've had about Inter over these last season or two is that they're such a good team who sometimes don't show up for the biggest games. Of course, Champions League has been the exception to that in the last little while, but that's certainly been the bugbear with them domestically, and certainly was an issue last season. Of course, they played Milan 5 times and didn't beat them last season, which cast a bit of a shadow over their season. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's an interesting run in the derbies, but outside that, they struggled against Napoli, for example. They struggled against Juventus, and I think so for them, this is probably quite a good one to get back on the horse. Having said that, I would really strongly fancy Inter for this. Remember, they've only conceded 1 goal in the Champions League. The only team with a better record defensively is Arsenal. I would fancy Inter a lot more for this if they weren't going to Madrid. I think going to the Metropolitano makes it completely different. Now, you talked about Newcastle being not that great on the road. Well, if we're talking about in a strictly Champions League context, Atletico are absolutely terrible away from home. And I think it's not just the results. It's like when they catch a stray, they just fall to bits, really. They have these spells where they're absolutely run over by the opposition. Now, of course, they've had 2 difficult away games so far in Liverpool and Arsenal, but they played quite well for periods of those games, and then ended up with these really deflating defeats in very different ways off the back of that. So they have to make the most of their home games. Atletico are only really in with a shout at the top 24 at the moment, not the top 8, for that reason. They'll still need to get points on the road at some point, but they definitely have to try and win this. Yeah.
I guess changing times. When I was a little boy, that's a while ago, Benfica were regularly winning the European Cup. When I was a teenager, a very young teenager, Ajax were regularly winning and transforming the way the game was played around the world. Here they are now, with their multiple wins in the Champions League. They face off in Amsterdam, Andy, with neither of them having a single point on the board at this stage.
No points, 3 goals between them, and 22 conceded. It's a pretty miserable record, all in all. So there's a lot on the line, most of which for the moment is pride. We can talk about reaching the top 24, and Jose Mourinho will say, well, look, there are still 12 points to play for. We're only halfway through the league stage, etc. And you have to feel that Benfica are closer to getting something out of this than Ajax. But personally, I don't think either of them are going to make the top 24. I think there's too much damage done in these opening 4 games. But Ajax have appropriately, I suppose, not massively improved under Fred Grimm. They're a shadow of a team, really, at the moment. And it's so sad. These 2 clubs who've got, 6 European Cups between them, at the moment can't get a point out of the games. And you know what? I think it's easy to say, well, of course, the landscape, the financial landscape and the power landscape of European football has changed and all that. All that is true. But I think both of these teams and both of these clubs have been more efficient and productive versions of themselves than they currently are, particularly in the case of Ajax.
Absolutely. One understands why they can't compete with the power of some of the clubs who've now got, owners who float above the earth in their spaceships and all the rest of it. But at least you can do is to be the best version of yourself. Both of these are way short of that. Now, here you go. And a chance for you to do one of your favourite things, which is defend Turkish football. I'm always noting that nobody wants to go to Turkey to play because their fans are so fantastically volatile and the grounds are full and it's very, welcome to hell and all the rest of it. But that's usually offset by the fact that the teams are hopeless away from home for reasons I've never quite understood. You may know better than me. But Galatasaray have got a home game against Union Saint-Gilloise. Of course, I make them short odds favourites. And if they win that, they'll almost certainly be in the top 8.
Well, they'll
definitely qualify for the 16. All right, yeah.
Yeah, they'll definitely be in the top 24. But I think you've got a point, Danny. I think they have got a chance of the 8. Now, of course, an issue for them is Victor Osimhen got injured during the qualifiers for the World Cup, which were ultimately unsuccessful for Nigeria. So we'll see how quickly
an amazing story in itself that Nigeria should fail to qualify.
Really is. And but in the meantime, we've got Mauro Icardi, who's just reached 100 performances for the club, and an iconic figure for them. They've got Barish Yilmaz, who's back in great form as well. So many other good players who are hitting at the moment. Of course, Sané had a very productive international break. And as you say, they're heavy favourites. Union Saint-Gilloise, who after that opening win at PSV, I mean, that's looked like a fluke ever since, both for PSV and for Union as well, because Union have really struggled with the level since then. So let's imagine that Galatasaray beat Union this midweek. That takes them to 12 points. The remaining fixtures are away at Monaco. They've got a home game as well against Atletico Madrid. And then they've got to go to Manchester City on the final day. Now, we've already established that Atletico aren't that good on the road. We've established that Monaco aren't that good. And then you look at the fact that Man City, by match day 8, are going to be home and host. Yeah. So that, to me, say we take Galatasaray to 12 points. Say they win this week. If they get another 4 out of those remaining 3 fixtures, they'll be in the top 8. They'll have 16 points and they'll be in the top 8. And then, I mean, that's an enormous boost for Turkish football. There's no doubt about that. And I think it really does something to the look of this final league table. They're very, very doable fixtures. Of course, we have seen Turkish teams and Galatasaray in the Champions League snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in the past. But it's looking good at the moment.
Yeah, it would be good for Turkish football to get a good news story off the back of the extraordinary revelations about gambling in their domestic league. It just would be. We'll see what happens. Remind me in your schedule, Andy, you're going to London to see Arsenal Bayern on Tuesday.
Wednesday. Manchester for City Leverkusen on Tuesday. And then Thursday, I'm off to Dublin.
Sorry, I thought we had agreed you were going to Tallinn. No, you're going to Dublin for Shakhtar, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Shamrock versus Shakhtar.
In Dublin?
Yes.
Oh, you were messing with me when you said the game was in Tallinn. I thought so. All right, we'll be looking at that very, very soon in the next hour when we'll look at some of these big games in the Europa League and the Conference League as Andy goes on yet another world tour. You're listening to Trans Europe Express. We're really, really glad to have you along for the ride.
Everyone knows there are 20 managers in the Premier League, yeah? Well, actually, no. Around 3/4 of them are not managers. The terms manager and head coach are often used interchangeably to describe Premier League bosses, but they're actually two different jobs. So let's explain how and why. For years, fans referred to Mikel Arteta as Arsenal's manager, but I'm afraid technically...
I don't think so, no.
From his first day on the job, he was the Gunners' head coach. Let's pick a random moment in time, February 2025. Only 6 Premier League bosses actually held the official title of manager rather than head coach. Man City's Pep Guardiola, David Moyes of Everton, Ipswich boss Kieran McKenna, Southampton's Ivan Juric, Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace and Leicester's Ruud van Nistelrooy were the only actual managers of their respective teams. Everyone else? That's right, head coach, including Ruben Amorim at Man United. He took over from Erik ten Hag, a man who had held the title of manager. Might come as a surprise that Amorim's appointment marked the first time ever that Man United had a head coach instead of a manager. But to understand why they made that decision, you also have to get what the difference is between a head coach and a manager. A manager's got a huge range of responsibilities. They're not just in charge of training and player lineups, they're also heavily involved in player sales and transfers. Critical stuff. But a head coach's role is far more focused on team training and performance on the pitch. So whereas Ten Hag was highly involved with decisions around transfers during his tenure, the intention was that Amorim wouldn't be, at least not on the same level. And as the sporting structure at Man United changed under Sir Jim Ratcliffe, people like Sir Dave Brailsford took charge of transfers instead. How all those roles play out in practice may be slightly different at different clubs though. On the other hand, the contracts of actual managers like Pep or Moyes had no limits on their job role and their involvement with transfers and contracts. But those guys are actually in the minority now, and it's a change that's happened pretty quickly. In 2019, there were only 6 head coaches in the Premier League, but by 2025, there were 14. A clear indication that more and more clubs are moving towards a model where the guy in charge is actually only really in charge on the pitch. And the way things are going, it might not be long before all 20 clubs have got head coaches, and the job position of football manager in the top flight is no more.
Yeah, welcome back everybody to the third and final hour of tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express. I'm Danny Kelly. With me is Andy Brassell. Thank you for listening to us, one and all. I'm actually really excited about this last hour. There's loads of stuff I'm really interested in. It's always the same. Tim Vickery will join us all the latest from South America. Then we'll try and unravel the 16 teams and the draw for those last 4 places for European teams in the upcoming World Cup. Some really tasty ties there to us to see how the teams are going to get through. Andy will then take us through some of the games in the Europa League, including a replay of the 1979 European Cup final when Forest take on Malmo, and then we'll go around the leagues as we always do in the run-up to midnight. I'm Danny Kelly, he's Andy Brassell, you're the listening millions, and I've just checked with local council bylaws. They confirm that is the perfect arrangement. Welcome back, everyone.
Express. Express.
Yeah, those of you watching on TV will notice behind me I've got a lovely picture of the Stone Roses, which all 4 of them have signed to me, left over from the days when I was knocking around with them. I was so shocked during the week to hear that their bass player Manny had died. A lovely, lovely man. I only mention him on a football show because I hark back to a particularly lovely night. We sat in a bar in Amsterdam with the city twinkling across the canals beneath us, and we talked about music and football long into the night. He was absolutely mad about Manchester United. Real sad loss, Manny. I just thought I'd mention that, and that'll explain why that picture is behind me there for those of you watching us say on the various ways. Which takes us to South America and to our great friend Tim Vickery. Good evening, Tim.
Evening, gentlemen. I don't know about how you find people, but I always find it really hard to get my head out of FIFA dates and back into the club game, especially this weekend. I don't know why. How are we all? We all well?
Really good, really good. Well, let's start with those internationals then. Tuesday was the big day for most of the teams from South America, including a performance by Uruguay that will have it certainly won't have encouraged their World Cup hopes.
Not at all. Wow. Well, just to round it up briefly, Brazil had problems, I think, in a 1-1 draw with Tunisia, although they were by far the better side. Most of the others had morale-boosting wins. Colombia 3-0 over Australia. Ecuador at last a goal for Ecuador 2-0 over New Zealand. Paraguay 2-1 away to Mexico. Terrific result that. Not so good for Bolivia, 3-0 away to Japan. They've got this playoff format. They will face Suriname, and then if they get through that, Iraq. And it's the last 3 games. They've lost them all 3 of them. No goals scored, 8 goals conceded. But the real bad story, the real nightmare was Uruguay away to the States in Tampa. It was the sorcerer and his apprentice, Marcelo Bielsa on one side, Mauricio Pochettino on the other.
Beautiful thing.
The States were not at full strength. Uruguay had no Valverde, no Darwin Nunez, but apart from that, they're pretty much there. And the scores on the doors, ladies and gentlemen: United States 5, Uruguay 1. It was 4-0 after about 40 minutes. Bentancur, who's had a wretched few days, got himself sent off in the second half, but this had no effect whatsoever on the score, and that's a real, because the States haven't been playing particularly well. There's been pressure on Pochettino, but they played like gods. They passed the ball wonderfully well. They won all the 50-50 duels. It was very, very embarrassing from a Uruguay point of view, and obviously embarrassing from the point of view of Marcelo Bielsa. But I think there's something in Bielsa that kind of loves these situations, loves them, because they fly back to Uruguay and he calls a press conference for Monday night, and people are thinking, is he going to go? Is he announcing there? The Uruguay FA said, no, we're supporting him. He can stay if he wants to. But, he's called this press conference. No one knows what's going to happen in this press conference. And then he talked. And he talked. And he talked. And he absolutely loves failing and then having to explain why he fails. He absolutely loves it. But it was a bizarre, it touched on the surreal, because it was a lot of heaping abuse on himself. I'm a toxic person. Everyone who comes in contact with me gets worse as a result. I'm an obsessive.
What a man.
I'm an obsessive. All I see is the mistakes. All I care about is work. If we all go out together, I'll take a newspaper just so I can read that and I won't have to interact with anyone. I generate tension wherever I go. He just heaping abuse on himself for 2 hours, but deciding that
2 hours.
Oh yeah, at least it was 2 hours and plus, and that's all he's doing, and he can do it in 20 minutes if he wants to, and if they just won, he'd do it in 5 minutes and then wander off. But when they've lost, he absolutely loves these situations. So, and he said, if I'm receiving lots of criticisms about my behaviour and so on, if the players want me out, they've got to come and tell me that they want me out. If no one does that, he's going to be taking them to the World Cup. So, Marcelo Bielsa, here we go. What an extraordinary chapter it is to an already extraordinary career.
So, Tim, talking of big coaching victories, of course, we were talking about Valencia earlier, and one of their superstar names of the past has just won his first title as a coach with the Copa Sudamericana. So maybe you can tell us about that before you tell us about that being the build-up to the big one of the weekend.
Yeah, the Sudamericana, which is the Europa League equivalent. It was Lanús of Argentina, coached by Mauricio Pellegrino, late of Liverpool and of Southampton, and against Atlético Mineiro of Brazil. Hulky up front, Jorge Sampaoli on the touchline on a very, very hot afternoon in Paraguay. It wasn't a great watch. It was 0-0. Atletico had by far the better of the game. They had almost all the clear chances, but it goes to penalties. And And what a story this is. This is an unbelievable story, I think. Lanús have a player, I don't know if you remember, he had a little spell in Spain 15 years or so ago, Lautaro Acosta, a little attacking midfielder. And I think there was a couple of Spanish clubs that he played for. But he started with Lanús, went away for 5 years, came back with Lanús. He's played more games for Lanús than anyone else. There is a statue of him outside the stadium. He came on, he's at the veteran stage now, he's going to retire at the end of the year, and he came on in the 118th minute in order to take his penalty.
Wow.
He has the 5th penalty. If he scores, Lanús are champions. And you could see in his face, the adrenaline was really, really pumping. Now, there's one place, if you get it right, the goalkeeper will never, ever save it, and that's up top. But the problem is, no one has ever missed a penalty for hitting too low. And the little bit of extra adrenaline, he skied it. It went over the bar. No. He missed. Yes, this could be his last kick for the club. And he skied it over the bar. And you're thinking at that point, Atletico are going to do it. Atletico are going to do it. But they didn't. They didn't. Their keeper kept on getting close, but he couldn't save any more. And Lanús have won, which means there has been, because Brazil is absolutely dominating the continent, but at least this tournament, the last 4 finals the Brazilian side has lost in the final. Indeed, that's 5 finals if you include an all-Brazilian final. So at least in the last 4 years, we've had 2 wins for Ecuador and now 2 wins for Argentina. So congratulations to Lanús, congratulations to Mauricio Pellegrino. They have won the Europa League equivalent.
Yes, so who's going to win this weekend when the big one, the Libertadores final?
It's the final of the century. It's Flamengo of Rio against Palmeiras of São Paulo. If you look at their records in the competition, you would think Palmeiras are free-scoring, happy-go-lucky, and Flamengo are very, very tight defensively and don't score any goals. The reality is probably an exact reverse of that. They're going toe-to-toe for the Brazilian title. Flamengo have scored a lot more goals, and the goals suddenly have dried up. They haven't scored for something like 3 games now. So with 3 rounds to go, Flamengo have a 4-point lead. It could even be all over on Tuesday night, which is my fear for the game on Saturday. Just they are playing. It's so many games. It's game after game after game after game. The game takes place in Lima in Peru, which is a long, long way for the supporters. And it's a long, long way out of Lima to the ground. It will be, I think, a great occasion. It could be cagey. They played a month ago and Palmeiras came out to play and got done. They lost 3-2. I suspect this one will be much, much more cagey, but there is a lot of talent on the field. I mean, these clubs have been going shopping in Europe. They made a lot of money from the Club World Cup. Now the Club World Cup is a consolidated part of the calendar. I think they're here to stay as real superpowers. And every reason, it's going to be live on English TV, every reason, I think, to watch Flamengo and Palmeiras, and every reason to join us this time next week when we can dissect what happened in the final.
And finally, then, I can't wait. Actually, you're absolutely right. Now, I told you the other day, I'm now seeing live Brazilian football on one of the multiple channels that I somehow have to pay for to watch football. And I always think about, Tim's watching this as well. Tell us about what's happened to Rosario Central.
The Argentine football is so bizarre at times. The season is divided into 2. There's an apertura and a clausura. And both of them, it's a league phase followed by knockout. And the knockout, it's the last 16 teams. It's one game. One game. It's not home and away. It's one game.
Right.
Going. So it's over very, very quickly. It's quite exciting, but it's over very, very quickly. Anyway, this week, the Argentine FA decided, we've got 2 separate championships a year. Why don't we have an overall champion? And the overall champion will be the team that's accumulated most points over. But it had already happened. So, they proclaimed Rosario Central champions of Argentina. And Rosario Central had no idea that they'd been competing for this title because this title didn't exist. It was invented after the fact. So huge celebrations for Rosario Central and Di Maria. And then they go out, they've just gone out to face their knockout game against Estudiantes, and Estudiantes are supposed to make a guard of honour for them. because they're the champions, right? So Estudiantes, they're supposed to make a guard of honour for Rosario Central as Rosario Central take the pitch. Do you know what Estudiantes did? They turned their backs.
Yeah.
They turned their backs in protest. So there was no proper guard of honour. And then in a stadium with no away fans, it's a bear pit, the stadium of Rosario Central. Estudiantes had the last laugh as well because they won 1-0. They precede Rosario Central. In the week that they've been declared champions of Argentina, they've been knocked out of the Argentine Championship. Beat that.
Oh, Tim, that was an amazing story. And Argentinian football and footballers just the best. They turned their back on the newly pronounced but unwitting champions. I mean, just nuts. Thank you very, very much indeed, Tim. I'm going to warm my hands on that story for the next couple of days. Thanks very much indeed. Next up, well, we all know, congratulations to Scotland and England steamrolled the way through. The other Celtic nations in these islands are all still in with a chance of qualifying for the World Cup. We'll discuss the Pathways Draw, as it's called by FIFA, next here on Trans Europe Express. Yeah, that music is the clue, isn't it? There's NFL action this morning where you can listen to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing at the Los Angeles Rams live on talkSPORT 2 after our show from just about 1 a.m. That's live NFL on talkSPORT 2 from just after 1 a.m. So, European World Cup qualifiers, those teams who've just narrowly failed to qualify through the group stages have got a second chance now because of the way the qualifying has worked. We had the draw, Andy, 16 teams in 4 little semi-final and final situations from which 4 teams will go through. I was going to say, first of all, congratulations to Scotland, amazing, and England are already there with tremendous efficiency. We can't have all 3 of the Celtic nations from these islands qualifying because of the way the draw's gone. Because in Pathway 1, Wales played Bosnia and Italy played Northern Ireland, and then the 2 winners of those ties, just one game, don't forget, then play the final for a place in the World Cup. I mean, obviously, Italy are either here, how you look at it, Andy, either really short odds favourites to qualify from that pathway, or now looking at yet another calamitous banana skin.
Yeah, look, I think when you look at the Italy-Norway game from last week, as I've said elsewhere, it was a game that really on paper meant next to nothing, but in reality actually turned out like meaning quite a lot, because Norway, from their perspective, got to celebrate their brilliant qualifying campaign, enjoy absolutely hammering one of the greats of world football, even if, arguably they've not got the greatest team at the moment, in their home. And from an Italian perspective, after a very, very good first half against Norway, I thought the second half and the way they were comprehensively taken to bits by Norway, particularly after the Antonio Nusa equaliser, really underlined all the doubts that they have about themselves, and all the doubts that they have around these playoffs, of course. I think when this draw came out, the fact that they're not getting North Macedonia will be something they're delighted with, because of course they came a cropper against North Macedonia in a game that they completely dominated. If we go back to the last World Cup qualifiers, in a game they completely dominated. They had enough chances to win 2 or 3 games, and they managed to lose right at the end of that. I remember they were playing, of course, Portugal in the final. This was for they were meant to be playing Portugal in the final. This was for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, and there was I know the Portuguese FA's press office was absolutely swamped with accreditation requests for what they thought would be, the biggest World Cup qualifying playoff you could possibly imagine between Porto and Italy. And then you had 80% of the journalists cancelling it when North Macedonia got through to the final, and Portugal, North Macedonia is not quite the same, obviously. So, that was something, the shock of that really reverberated around world football. And I don't know if Italy are totally over it. I think if you look at them player for player, they should be fine, really. They should be fine, with all due respect to Northern Ireland, to beat them. Then, of course, Wales away is difficult, but it's something that they should be able to surmount. Again, if you look player for player. But look, all of this is in Italy's heads. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't have wanted to be drawn in Belfast, but they've got the home draw there. The next pathway, Andy, Ukraine take on Sweden, Poland take on Albania. Now, this is where we remark that the draw is 3 months away from the games. A lot can happen, including, Andy, and I know your affiliations with Ukrainian football, Sweden getting all its superstar forwards back fit and firing. Isak, Kulusevski, Bergvall, etc., etc.
Yeah, and of course they've not had Gyökeres the last couple of weeks.
There you go.
So that makes a massive difference. Now, look, Graham Potter's under no illusions about how much work they've got to do, and again, they look low on confidence. I thought when they lost heavily in Switzerland, but there were good bits in that game. Certainly, I thought the first half was quite presentable, and until that very dubious penalty that put Switzerland 2-1 up. Sweden were well in the game. So I think that's it. If you were playing Sweden now, I think if you're Ukraine, you fancy your chances. But remember, Ukraine aren't really at home. They're only nominally at home. And they have to face like what could be like an incredible attack, really. If you've got Isak and Gyökeres in good form, supplied by Kulusevski,
Elanga.
That's something. And Elanga's found it hard to settle into a role at Newcastle as well. Maybe that's different by the time we get to March.
Yes, the next group.
On the other side of that, I was going to say, Danny, no one wants Albania. Albania are really, really tough, and I think we saw that with England. I thought England played pretty well there, actually, especially given the context of the game. But Albania made it much harder for England than Serbia did in either of those games. Yeah. And bear in mind, in the game at Wembley, Serbia had really something to play for as well, didn't they?
They did. Pathway C has Slovakia against Kosovo, Turkey against Romania. Andy, the football country of size here is Turkey, and this is a good draw for them, and they will be expecting to qualify.
Yeah, they will. But you've got an improving Romania, and on the other side of the draw, like Slovakia, beat Germany in Bratislava, and that's why Germany was so worried about the return. In the end, they played brilliantly, Germany, and won 6-0, of course, best performance for absolutely ages. But Slovakia are not pushovers. The other thing is Kosovo, I thought, were really, really quite impressive in qualifying. So, look, Turkey are the favourites for this. The big problem for them, and it's very hard to sort of sort issues within your personnel without a transfer window or any sort of notion of that. They haven't really got a centre forward. I guess the plus for them actually is since Icardi's been gradually coming back from this injury and Osimhen injured at the moment, we're having more of Barış Yilmaz playing at centre forward. And Barış is learning to. He's a wide player. He's learning to play centre forward quite well. So if that can work for Turkey in the medium term, again, I think if you're looking forward to March, and this is a guy who's like a super talented player and a really quick learner, maybe that works. His club situation works in their favour.
Pathway D finds Czechia hosting the Republic of Ireland after their Houdini-like escape into these playoffs, and then Denmark taking on the aforementioned North Macedonia. This is quite a tricky one to work out, Andy.
Yeah, it is a really tricky one to work out. And if I was Irish, I would be feeling super positive at the moment.
It's a good draw.
Particularly with the way they went to Budapest and got the result. Because otherwise, I think Czechia looks quite daunting. I think you think
Patrick
of the atmosphere
Stick and all that.
Yeah, you think of that. Pavel Schultz is settling eventually in Lyon. You've got some good players and some good experience to lean on as well. But if they get through that, like to play either of those teams in Dublin, and I'm not assuming it's going to be Denmark, because remember, them basically losing the lead at Belarus is what left them in the position to get mugged for automatic qualification in Scotland. If they beat Belarus, you've never got one of the most famous nights in recent Scottish football history, or maybe Scottish football history period. It was so exciting. So Denmark really let this slip out of their control, and to sort of take a bit of a deep breath and get back to like being sensible, and I think it's quite hard. They are definitely the team of the four with the most to lose in this. There's no doubt about that.
You're right to say that the Republic of Ireland, should they get through against Czechia, had the home advantage if they play Denmark, although there'll be some extraordinarily nervous people in the country where I live, because we had a recent playoff against them where I think Denmark won 5-0. Christian Eriksen got a hat-trick. Christian's on the bench these days. His very presence will send shivers through the Aviva. My sister's already talking about him. I said he's not even in the team anymore. Blinking Eriksen, Arsenal fan, of course she is. These are really exciting, Andy. I can't wait. I have to wait. It's months before these things happen. I'm looking forward to them hugely, and we'll see who gets through. from these. Early on we talked to Tim. Was it Bolivia who have got the playoff against the Seychelles or someone like that in South America? They've lost 10 games in qualifying so far. South America's a very odd qualification process.
I think that's the thing, Danny. You look at all of these, and we didn't even mention, like, we were assuming, or we kind of assumed when we were talking about like Italy's potential trip to Cardiff, like the Wales get past Bosnia. That's quite a big assumption. Bosnia are so improved in the last year, because the last time they visited England, of course, about a year and a half ago, just before the Euros, to play in that friendly against England at St James's Park, they were awful. Like they were so bad at that point, and not just in that game. The morale around the national team setup and the team, it was really low. And now they've got some players of substance they can lean on, and most of them aren't Edin Dzeko, which is amazing.
Yeah, I'm listening. Thank you for all those, Andy. Should be an amazing group of matches when they start being played very quickly, one after the other, in March. Next, though, it's time for us to turn our attention to the Europa League. Big games in that as well. Andy will tell you about some of those very soon here on Trans Europe Express.
When was the last time you saw someone score with a knuckleball free kick? We're going to take a look at why we're not seeing them anymore and explain a bit about how they work. The knuckleball peaked in the 2010s after that Ronaldo strike against Portsmouth in 2008 inspired academy players everywhere. Here's a young Mason Mount.
I tried to base my free kick on Ronaldo, hit the ball by the valve and it moves. So what do you do? Top corner.
Now, no ball is perfectly aerodynamic.
Las Vegas, baby, on talkSPORT.
Yeah, thanks to our friends at Virgin Hotels Las Vegas, we're giving you and a friend the chance to win the ultimate trip of a lifetime to Las Vegas. Picture this, you and your best mate flying upper class from London to Vegas, checking into a luxury spa villa for 4 incredible nights at Virgin Hotels Las Vegas, cheering from the stands as the Las Vegas Raiders take on the Kansas City Chiefs, and to top it all off, £5,000 in cash to play with. So, clear your calendar from January the 2nd to January the 7th next year, that's 2026, because nothing starts a new year like Vegas. Good luck.
21 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text WIN to 83338. Text at £2 plus standard network rates. Bill payer's permission required. Or call 03434239761. Calls are charged at standard rate. All entries must be received by the 28th of November at 4 p.m. This is a network promotion. Run across talkSPORT, Virgin Radio UK and Talk. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Yeah, we'll get into the Europa League and the Conference League in just a second. Let me just tell you about all the commentaries we've got coming up Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday here on the talkSPORT network. On Tuesday, 8 o'clock here on talkSPORT, the Champions League game between Marseille and Newcastle, while over on talkSPORT 2, kicking off at 7:45, huge game at the top of the Championship, Middlesbrough take on Coventry. Then on Wednesday, it's all Champions League for you from 8 o'clock. Here on talkSPORT, Arsenal against Bayern in the tie of the round. And over on talkSPORT 2, Liverpool take on PSV Eindhoven. Then on Thursday, 3 games for you. The early kickoff from the Europa League. Over on talkSPORT 2, Villa against Young Boys. Then 2 games for you at 8 o'clock. Here on talkSPORT, the match between Nottingham Forest and Malmo. While over on talkSPORT 2, we've got the game from the Conference League where Strasbourg take on Crystal Palace. Your home of live football remains talkSPORT. Andy, let's talk about one of those games then. I'm old enough to remember the 1979 European Cup final between Nottingham Forest and Malmo. A lot has changed for both clubs since then, but even so, there'll be some lovely memories being elicited by that. And Forest, of course, improving rapidly now.
Yeah, they are. And I guess for Malmo, this is difficult. A, because of the difference in means. B, because so much has changed in that last 46 years, of course. But they've just come off the back of, and their domestic season has just finished, of course. The Allsvenskan season just finished. And they've come off the back of what can only be described as a very, very chastening season. So they fired the coach at the end of September when they were miles off the top. The new guy, Anis Maravac, is quite young, 36. They're really going with regenerating, trying something new. But really, it's not just about the coach. They got a lot of the recruitment wrong last season because this is the club that's the richest club in Sweden. They finished 6th. You know, we've talked about the miracle of Mjällby, and it's an incredible story. But a little bit like Leicester, in that situation, it required a lot of other things to go wrong for other people, as well as going right for them as well. And Malmo being the principal one of those, I think it could be quite a long night for them once we've had the think back to what happened 46 years ago.
Yeah, you could say the same for Young Boys from Switzerland who bring themselves to Villa Park. They're not the power they used to be either, even in Switzerland, and it could be a long night for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've got themselves back in the Swiss title race, beat Winterthur handily this weekend as well, and they've got a nice mix between experience and youth. But for them, it's a lot about recovering from last season because it was so shambolic, most of it. You know, they got themselves nominally back in the title race in the back end when you got towards the playoffs, but I mean, really the first 2/3 of the season was just a mess, really, after they qualified for the Champions League. And I can't help thinking that being in the Europa League after what happened last season is quite helpful to them. But as we know, I think you look at the most powerful teams from the Premier League, and you look particularly in this competition, Villa and Forest, and the sort of form that Villa are coming into, and the fact that Unai Emery's at the helm, this should be cut and shut for them, really.
Yeah, Rodgers' brilliant goal today as well. The game that's interesting in one way is that Rome, top of Italy as we speak this evening, take on Midtjylland, who've won all their games so far in the Europa League. Well done them.
Yeah, they have. And we spoke about it last time, how Rangers losing at home to Roma, or Roma going to Rangers and winning, was a result that Roma desperately needed. They were lucky, I think, to an extent, that Rangers was just abject on the night and didn't really offer much. So Roma didn't really have to get out of second gear, because the remaining matches that Roma have got are tough ones. They've got Stuttgart to come, they've got to go to Panathinaikos on the final day, and then they've got this against Midtjylland. Midtjylland, who have been competitive in European competition, have been competitive in the Champions League, really going back in the last couple of years, and it's really impressive. So I think we saw the way they played against Celtic, which I thought was very, very good indeed. I think, and you look at the fact that Roma have lost their 2 home games so far against Lille, which can happen, particularly after you miss 3 penalties in a row, and then you look at the home game against Vittoria Pilsen, which is just inexplicable, really, but that might still end up costing them. But Roma love to crawl through a Europa League group stage. They never do it with flying colours.
Andy, because of the way the timings have worked, I think we've got time here to just have a quick word about the 2 Glasgow clubs as well. Celtic go to Feyenoord.
Yeah, they do. And Feyenoord have had a funny old weekend, I think it's fair to say. They've now lost 3 in a row, which is a bit of a mess for them. And Robin van Persie was absolutely steaming mad after they lost to NEC Nijmegen this weekend. They played a decent first half, in his words, and then it all sort of fell to bits for him in a way that was not acceptable. He singled out a couple of his players, including Anis Haj Musa, who's a terrific player. He was brilliant at Manchester City in the Champions League last year as well. You might remember when Feyenoord came from 3-0 down. But he got told if he plays like he played off the ball in the second half, he simply will be out. I mean, that's quite a big thing to say to one of your key players, publicly especially. So Van Persie's absolutely steaming mad. Obviously, the atmosphere at De Kuip will be great. And I think that the result for Celtic really is quite bad news, because it feels like Feyenoord are really going to have to respond in that game now.
Yeah, of course, Celtic will still be under the tutelage of Martin O'Neill, who was on the bench for Nottingham Forest in that game against Malmo in 1979. So things coming round and round. Rangers, also under new management, Andy, of course. They take on Braga. You'll be able to tell me what kind of shape Braga are in for that game at Ibrox.
Well, the one in the Portuguese Cup this weekend, but they're a far from exceptional Braga side. We're expecting them always to be up in the top 4, certainly.
Yes.
And they're not at the moment. They're drifting towards mid-table. They've been quite inconsistent. They still lean really heavily on Ricardo Horta, he's just a great midfield player, and they've been really heavily reliant on him for years, but more than ever, because things have been a bit of a mess. Another club that I suppose it's like a sort of backwater Monaco, really. We talked about clubs that aren't necessarily familiar names to us in European football, but you think there's no pressure there, whereas actually the people running the show are quite intense. And Antonio Salvador, the president of Braga, he does not suffer fools gladly, and he'd easily get through 3-4 coaches in a season if he's not happy with things. So, they need to go to Ibrox and play well.
Yeah, I nearly forgot to mention the tie of the round in the conference. On Thursday is Strasbourg, who take on Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace, of course, in fantastic form. And as I said, that's a game you can hear live here on the talkSPORT network. And we're rushing like oblique Seville, look it up, towards the finishing line. And next here, Andy will take us around the leagues which have restarted after the international break, including Netherlands, Turkey, Portugal and Ukraine. Andy, we've got about 6 minutes to go around the leagues, the way things are tonight. A bit of an early finish, but I know you can do it. We're talking about the Netherlands and that terrible form that Feyenoord find themselves in, but of course they're not as bad as Ajax.
Well, that's fair to say, Danny. I mean, they lost to Excelsior this weekend at home.
At home.
They were 2-0 down before Kasper Dolberg came on and pulled one back. But, you know, it never really felt like Excelsior were properly under the pump to me. And look, the situation that they're in, to put it into some sort of context, Excelsior are battling relegation and they went to Ajax and won like reasonably comfortably, which is a remarkable thing to say out loud. Look, I don't see it getting much better for them much quickly. And you look at them, they're 14 points behind PSV at the top, which I guess if you look at the last couple of seasons is par for the course. But at this early stage of the season still, they are closer to last place than they are to first place, which is remarkable. But if we're talking about great names from the Netherlands in the past as well, I know our friend Alex would always want us to give a mention to Telstar, who are bottom of the table, but, you know, they're in there fighting. They were so close to a win today against Utrecht, but an equaliser for Jan Bosdogan from distance. And Ronald Koeman Jr., of course, the goalkeeper for Telstar, came out afterwards and said, yeah, that one's all on me. It didn't look brilliant. I thought he was being a little bit harsh on himself. But
yeah, well, Feyenoord's poor form and Ajax's poor being mean that PSV are now 6 points clear at the top of the Eredivisie. Let's go to Turkey then, Andy. And a familiar name among the goal scorers for Galatasaray this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. What turned out to be a winner from İlkay Gündoğan. So came on as substitute. Lovely little finish from him to get them 3-1 up. They were 1-0 down in the first half against Gençlerbirliği and looking a bit shambolic actually at the back. I thought a bit jittery and nervous after a few poor domestic results recently, rather than their poised selves of the start of the season. Brought on Icardi, scored. Brought on Gündoğan, who scored, and eventually saw it home 3-2 despite a little wobble. But I guess showing us really how to get over a wobble and only 1 point behind them this weekend were Fenerbahce, who were 2-0 down at Rizespor, ended up winning 5-2. What a comeback.
Yeah, turned it around. In Portugal, it's been the Portuguese Cup. But look, nothing in Portuguese football now is not dominated by the thoughts of Chairman Mourinho.
Yeah, exactly. Wins for all the big teams, as you would expect. And Porto trying to find rhythm for their Europa League game this week. They actually played a pretty strong team. Benfica won 2-0 at Atletico on Friday night ahead of that game against Ajax, which obviously they've got to win to have any chance going forth in the Champions League. And Mourinho made a couple of subs at half-time. He said, I would have made 9 if I could, which I guess by Mourinho standards is beating around the bush a little bit.
I wonder who are the two who were going to survive the chop if he had all those substitutes.
I think it was the goalkeeper plus Richard Rios. That's what I think. That's my guess. I'll be interested if he could confirm or deny if you're listening, Jose. But look, it's interesting because he went on to say afterwards. He said, and he's been very strong on what a privilege it is to be coaching Benfica and all that since he's come back.
Sure.
And he said there are players who don't understand how big Benfica is until they've left. And some of them will be able to think about that because they'll be leaving quite soon.
I know. Before he sours everything, but the first couple of months at every club he goes to are just great fun, aren't they? When he denigrates.
No, while it's souring is the best bit, and that's what's happening at the moment, I would suggest.
When he starts to denigrate the players, yeah. And finally, Andy, you're going to be in Dublin this week. You spend more time in Ireland than you do in England. Because Shakhtar travelled to play Shamrock Rovers, who have had a brilliant season in Ireland, won their 5th title in 6 years. They shouldn't have the resources to deal with Shakhtar, but what I will say is the Shakhtar will enjoy the atmosphere. It'll be an absolute madhouse there. It'll be good.
Yeah, you thought I was going to Tallinn. I'm actually going to Tala. So I'm looking forward to that. And it'll be my first time at the game there, so I'm very much looking forward to that. And Shamrock, of course, were very unlucky to not get a win across the line last time out against AEK Athens, even though they were under pressure for a lot of that game.
They were.
The penalty given against them was farcical, really, from which AEK equalised. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with the trophy behind them now, how they deal with that. Look, I think their best template is to try and do what Aberdeen did against Shakhtar, start fast, get in their faces. It seems like obvious stuff, but it really worked for Aberdeen. Aberdeen had Shakhtar on the ropes for half an hour before their class told. So maybe that's the way to do things. Shakhtar won 6-0 at Obolon this weekend, looking brilliant. They've scored... my maths is terrible, but 13 goals in their last 2 league games. They're clear at the top of the table now, and most importantly, they're 10 points clear of Dynamo Kiev, who, after having an unbeaten domestic season last season, are really struggling at the moment.
Yeah, of course, Shamrock have had a couple of weeks to prepare because the last game was when they beat Cork in the cup final to win the double here in the Republic. And that's just about it. Lots of live football coming up for you on talkSPORT. I'll be back tomorrow on H&J. Thiago Alcantara won our poll. Thank you very much for listening. Up next is Outspoken with White and Jordan. God bless you all and good night.
Everyone knows there are 20 managers in the Premier League, yeah? Well, actually, no. Around 3/4 of them are not managers. The terms manager and head coach are often used interchangeably to describe Premier League bosses, but they're actually two different jobs. So let's explain how and why. For years, fans referred to Mikel Arteta as Arsenal's manager, but I'm afraid technically...
I don't think so, no.
From his first day on the job, he was the Gunners' head coach. Let's pick a random moment in time, February 2025. Only 6 Premier League bosses actually held the official title of manager rather than head coach. Man City's Pep Guardiola, David Moyes of Everton, Ipswich boss Kieran McKenna,